Hello, my name is Doran Ellen Beldotan in Tzfat in Israel. I'm looking at my husband and laughing because I guess he knows what my name is. The information that I want to give in here is a few different points which are, I think, very important to know what's going on in Israel. There are some wonderful, important developments that should make everybody's heart happy if you're basically a good person. Make your heart very unhappy if you're not a good person. This dovetails with the information that I gave over in my last video, Project Jewish State, in which I spoke about the truth bomb that the Adelson family let drop incidentally as part of their ongoing series of 70 years after, concerning the fact that the then Minister of Immigration, Chaim Moshe Shapira, knew that there were former female SS officers who had married Jews to the purpose of infiltrating the country. Clearly, and I have sent that information to the United States, of course. Not that I don't think they know it, but I want them to know that I know it. And I asked them to look into who the children and grandchildren of the known Nazis who infiltrated Israel are today and in what positions they might be. One can well imagine the type of positions that a Nazi would want to occupy. I guess that's the best word. One of the things that disturbed me when I came to Israel was a dictatorship of clerks. They're called Pekidim in Israel, which should translate to clerks. And in the United States, clerks were always people very low on the totem pole of the business hierarchy. And I found it very upsetting and also troublesome that these clerks have tremendous power. Excuse me, I'm making a video. This moth likes me, it keeps coming over me. I couldn't understand it. And I kept saying, what is this with the clerks having so much power? And then later I was to learn the hard way that insulting any public official, if they take any kind of umbrance to anything that you've said, is a criminal offense, you know, and they can even jail you for it, like they have Lori Shem Tov, and which I'm still being tried for. I said, what is this dictatorship of clerks? And now I understand that it's the Nazis who are embedded in these lifelong bureaucratic jobs. Politicians come and go, but the lifers are where you're going to find the Nazis embedded. Those are lifetime positions. That is certainly not to say that all of the clerks are Nazis, God forbid. Most of them are unknowing, useful idiots. I hope I haven't insulted anybody. But it's true. They mean well, but they're under the jurisdiction of the Nazis, and they're carrying out Nazi policy against the Jews in this country, even though they themselves don't know they're doing it. They're just taking orders. Where have we heard that before? I'm going to be posting these are crypt notes that I've prepared. I'm going to be posting them under the video. there are some really, really important things here that dovetail with all of that information very nicely. And I want the wider public to know about what's going on here. I have an active file with the tip office at the U.S. State Department, which is the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons. I contacted them quite a while ago, not long after Trump became president. The person that I spoke to was interested in what I had to say, took it very seriously, and assigned me a case number immediately. Since then, the state of Israel, or certain persons within it, have been under constant surveillance for trafficking and cooperating with trafficking. The tip office has a page on Facebook, and I go there, of course, to see what they're posting. And I was very, very happy to find the following. It was a post about the 4th International Seminar for Judges, which was held on October 14th of this year, just last month. The topic of that conference was the critical role of the judiciary in combating trafficking in human beings. They had it right here in Haifa. I'd like you to please listen to the blurb that they themselves wrote, and it's very important. On October 14th, the Golda Meir MASHAV Carmel International Training Center in Haifa, Israel, hosted the opening of the 4th International Seminar for Judges on the critical role of the judiciary in combating trafficking in human beings. Among the featured speakers at the event were Ambassador Gil Haskel, Deputy Director of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and head of MASHAV, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, Dina Dominitz, the National Anti-Trafficking Coordinator in the Israeli Ministry of Justice, Gershuni, International Anti-Trafficking Consultant and 2006 TIP Report Hero, and TIP Office, U.S. Department Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons, Deputy Director Joel Maybury. And there's a video which I will be giving a link to. Please watch that video. It's only a little over 4 minutes long. I loved watching that video. This was handled so elegantly and beautifully. You'll see that there are judges from all over the world who are singularly interested and knowledgeable about trafficking in persons, particularly trafficking in children, which is the worst of it, came to Haifa and met with this group at MASHAV, and they also went to the Supreme Court. Now, this was all done with tea and crumpets and in a very, very pleasant kind of an atmosphere, but they delivered the message, the unequivocal message that judges all over the world have their eye on Israel and know that there is a problem here. And they have come here so that they can be able to say, we went to Israel, we told them what the problem was, we gave them the tools that they needed to recognize this and handle it, and then if they don't cooperate, they cannot say they did not know. It was done beautifully. They went to the Supreme Court and met with the Right Honorable Supreme Court Justice Neil Hendel. If you were to ask me if there is one judge in Israel who I can think of has the whole package for being fit to be a judge over Israel in this generation, I would say Neil Hendel. If you were to ask me if I knew about another one, I would stop and think for a minute, and I would say, did I mention Neil Hendel? Neil Hendel is a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn who went to Yeshiva University, which means that he's modern Orthodox, which means that he is loyal to the Jewish tradition, but he is also very much aware of what's going on in the modern world. He is highly intelligent. He worked for the Public Defender's Office in the United States. Most of the judges in Israel hail from the Israeli prosecution. Once a prosecutor, darling, always a prosecutor. That's just the way it goes. He comes from the defense. He's as knowledgeable in Jewish law as he is in the other foreign law that has been absorbed into the Israeli codex. He has done a number of lectures on how terribly important it is not to convict people simply on the basis of a conviction, which is not only not permitted by Jewish law, it is forbidden. A person is not allowed to incriminate themselves according to Jewish law. Here in Israel, even when they don't have evidence against you, even when they have evidence that contradicts your confession, if you've confessed, they'll convict you. And obviously that opens up doors to many, many horribly ugly things, including the torture of minors. Judge Hendel has spoken out against this. Judge Hendel has also dressed down the antics of the state prosecutor when they have come into the Supreme Court, as they always do, thinking that they are owed support in their contentions, unprepared, and having tampered with evidence and insulting the intelligence of the Supreme Court justices. And he dressed them down, but good. He was part of a group of 3 judges who heard something, and they all agreed that Praklitud was out of line, the state prosecutor was out of line, and they went to the press with it, and they let it be known in no uncertain terms that they were thoroughly disgusted. I had the pleasure of actually meeting Judge Neil Hendel when he was working at the district court in Beersheba. At that time, I was active in Americans and Canadians in Israel, and he would come to some of our meetings and he would speak, and I remember liking him as a person as well as respecting him as a judge. So this international conference of judges from all over the world spoke to the best judge they possibly could, and that's good. Another very important thing that happened is an interview that was given by one Rabbi Yisrael Eichler, who is a member of the Israeli government. I don't like to call them the Knesset. It sticks in my craw. I think that it's demeaning to call the Israeli government the Knesset. I think that it degrades HaKnesset HaGedola, and I just call them either the government or the parliament. I don't call them the Knesset. I respect the Knesset too much to mix holy with profane. So he's a member of the Israeli government. He belongs to the Yahadut HaTorah, Torah Judaism party. He is none less than the deputy chairman of the head of the government, and he is also the head of the committee that receives public complaints. He's a Belzer Chassid, and seems to be a pretty decent person, all in all. He's a journalist as well. He gave an interview that actually made me fall off my chair. He said that the government that you think is the government is not the government. At this point, my jaw goes slack, and it gets, like, better. He says, this is a dictatorship. He said the Israeli dictatorship is not a dictatorship like other dictatorships where it's a dictatorship of one person. It's a dictatorship of an entire, what he called, a milieu. He said, once you're accepted into this clique, you become the shadow power. He said, there isn't one, not one, which means he's also talking about Netanyahu and himself. He says there is not one member of the Israeli government that the police does not have a file on, which they can pull out at any time if they don't like your behavior. And everybody in the Knesset is terrified of these people. They're frightened for their own skin. This is what he said. Yeah. He said that they come to Knesset committees and they interfere and they run things. And he made it very, very clear. He said, if you think that the people in the Knesset are the government, you are sadly mistaken. It's these people who, he said specifically, are among the lifelong bureaucrats in the tax authority and in the office of the Ministry of Justice. Hello, America. Hello, America. Now you know where to look for the Nazis. He actually said that. He then went on to make recommendations about what people can do to protect themselves and survive. He actually used, this is what you should do to survive. Hello, he's telling us we're in danger. He said to strengthen the NGOs as much as possible, community organizations, any kind of organizations that serve the public, that aren't government funded or dependent upon the government, to build them, strengthen them, and this is, by the way, same recommendation I've been giving along too, for people to, at the grassroots level, to develop democratic, he said, these are democratically run organizations, and to build up democracy, you have to build up grassroots NGOs. Wow. Hearing that from somebody who's in the inner circle of the government is like, woo, wow, wow, wowee. The next thing that I want to talk about, which is extremely important, they've kept it on the low down. I just found out about it from a video by Benjamin Fulford. Benjamin Fulford is someone whose information I find is not consistent as to how much it convinces me. Sometimes I find him very convincing, sometimes I don't find him convincing at all. This particular time I think he was right on, and when I checked what he was saying, and in fact it's true, I'll leave a link to the video, which is that electronic voice, what can you do, but it's important information, and also a video to an article. It says here, this is important, end of Rothschild rule. Rothschild rule ends after 250 years. New era to begin. I went to, I searched and I found that the Paris office of Reuters reported on October 24th, which is exactly 10 days after this meeting of the judges here in Israel. Isn't that interesting? It turns out October was a big month after all, huh? This moth this is going on since yesterday. This moth loves me. Goes where the light is, huh? You like the light? You can see the light that the people can't. It's true. It says Rothschild to sell trust services business. The Rothschilds have had to sell off their consulting business. Ooh, wah, 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 wah. By the way, Sheldon Adelson is a good friend of Trump. He has given Trump a lot of support. And I don't know that, you know, he's not exactly a Boy Scout making his money in Las Vegas. But he's not a Nazi. You know, and in our generation, if rich people aren't Nazis, you're like already grateful. They're already, you have the white hats. Benjamin Netanyahu tried to throw Sheldon Adelson under the bus. Sheldon Adelson put together the Yisrael Hayom paper to be a propaganda arm for Netanyahu, you know, beat his loudspeaker, and Netanyahu was going to make a deal with an Israeli newspaper owner who owns a larger newspaper and throw the Gingy under the bus. So although Yisrael Hayom is still going, and it still appears to be favoring Netanyahu, my instinct would be that that is purely opportunistic for the time being, and that Netanyahu made a very, very serious mistake getting on Sheldon Adelson's wrong side. There are two channels, many of you are probably already familiar with them, but if you're not, I want to tell you about them, because I think that they give some good information. Let me tell you something about my own videos. There have been times when I've watched my own videos back and I've realized that something that I've said was not phrased as accurately as I might wish, or I used the wrong term. For instance, in the last video that I made, I meant to say that the Supreme Court judge was retiring. Instead, I said resigning. I really meant to say retiring. That was just an error. And an error like that can be misleading. What I'm trying to say is that even in my own videos, knowing that I'm trying to be as absolutely truthful as possible, you can never ever give over 100% of the information, even when you want to and even when you've done your level best. So making videos, I know that everybody's information has to be checked and double-checked and vetted and taken with a grain of salt. So when I recommend somebody's videos, I'm not saying that every single word that they say is Torah mi-Sinai. You know, it's not Torah from Sinai. But I believe that their basic intentions are good. My recommendation for YouTube channels is the X22 report and the SGT bulletin. I'll put the links to those YouTube sites in the blurb below, and I think we're making magnificent progress. I really do. I think that Trump is, nobody would do better. I don't think people begin to understand what that man is dealing with, what he is bringing about, what he is trying to do, and the fact that he may have setbacks, the fact that his style might not appeal to somebody, the fact that somebody might think that he put too much hairspray on his toupee. When people start talking like that, they have absolutely no idea the magnitude and the depth of what that man is doing. People simply do not understand what the upshot of living under Project Paperclip and Project Gladio and Project Medinat Yisrael really means for the world, and what this man has managed to accomplish in 2 years, and what he is uprooting and what he is bringing about, not only not for personal reasons. He's probably investing a whole lot of money in what he's doing. He's doing it for the future generations. And I don't care whether, I'm not a Republican. I'm not even a renegade type of Republican, sort of like he is. I'm not in any of those kinds of ideological things. Neither really is he. I don't identify as a patriot. I'm a loyal Jew. I'm a loyal human being. I don't identify as any kind of a political loyalist of any kind. I look at a person and I calls him like I sees him. And this is probably the first time in my life since President Kennedy that I am convinced that America has a good friend in the White House. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that he's doing. I don't agree with everything that he's doing. But for God's sakes, even if you're not ideologically in favor of him, give him partial credit for what he is doing, because nobody could be doing a better job handling what he's doing than he is. Thank you for listening.